Hey guys, I'm a nihilistic atheist, in case you hadn't heard. I do not regard the religion of Judaism positively at all. But I am tied to it as a tradition by blood and by anti-Semitism. Because so many people on planet Earth are so anti-Semitic, I have to carry the Jewish identity and history with me forever. I don't have a choice about it. Back when I signed up to join the Canadian Army, I was actually pretty pissed off that they didn't have an option under ethnicity for Jewish. Because that's the reality. Judaism is not my religion. Jewishness is my ethnicity. And when you're signing up to join the Canadian Army in 2016, the war you're going to fight in, Judaism and anti-Semitism are definitely going concerns. The army you're fighting against does not regard Jews as equivalent to Christians or equivalent to white people or equivalent to any other Europeans. Definitely regarded as a separate ethnic category. So, I'm a nihilistic atheist, but Judaism remains a big deal in my life, and it's not optionally. And I also have a very strange perspective on this because I'm a vegan who has a prior background not just in Buddhism, but as a scholar of Buddhism. Someone who knows a lot about Buddhism, knows a lot about politics in Asia, and including politics of ethnicity and ethnic identity in Asia. So, with all that having been said, it's with a special sense of apprehension that I see the attempts to link Judaism to veganism, to make them into one ideology. And really what you're talking about is not even biblical Judaism. Well, that's part of it. It's really a kind of ethnic nationalism. It's a kind of Jewish ethnic nationalism, trying to link that to veganism. And a lot of that's going on, partly because of the seeming success of veganism in Israel, and partly just because I think there are a lot of people who are ethnically Jewish, whether or not they're religiously Jewish, who want to somehow promote Judaism through veganism or promote veganism as a fast Judaism. I'm going to play you a clip right now from this group who have the catchy name Jewish Veg. That's the name of their foundation. They're a real incorporated foundation. They're a registered charity. They're taking donations. They're making things happen. So, I mean, credit where it's due. They exist. Jewish Veg is not just a website. It's an actual charity. It's an actual organization. But I think you're going to hear pretty quickly, I'm going to play you like a 1-minute clip. And you're going to hear what my problem is with this approach.
What your rabbi maybe never told you is that a plant-based diet is truly the ideal in Judaism. That meat eating, while permitted, is presented in a negative light, and in some cases a very negative light.
Okay, sorry, just pause. You may not be able to hear that clearly because it's a live recording from a live lecture. So he said, what your rabbi may have never told you. And then he's getting into giving a justification for the biblicity, for a biblical Old Testament basis for veganism in Judaism.
And besides all that, we are mandated, not even instructed, but mandated in Judaism to treat animals with respect and exquisite compassion. So
he's claiming in Judaism we are mandated to treat animals with respect and exquisite compassion.
Sure that our organization is on a rock-solid Jewish foundation.
That's the sort of thing people only say when it's not true. If you hear someone say, American humanitarian intervention in Haiti is on a rock-solid foundation, already you know it's fucked up. If someone says to you, Canada's humanitarian engagement in Afghanistan is on a rock-solid foundation, why would you say that if it were true? When things are actually on a rock-solid foundation, nobody ever says that. Even if this is the first you've ever heard of Judaism, already from the way this guy presents the information, you've got a sense that actually the foundation that veganism rests on within Judaism is pretty shaky.
Not appending something onto Judaism, we're raising up core values that too often are suppressed or ignored.
So again, sorry, even though it's really brief, that's crucial. He says we are not appending something onto Judaism. So he's arguing that they're not appending veganism onto Judaism. He says, but they're raising up values that are already within Judaism.
So, nothing more boring than an order.
Okay, sorry, that's enough of that. He then gets into talking about the organization and what they do and thanks their donors and then goes on to other topics. Okay, so as simple as those 30 seconds, I think that was well under 1 minute. I was quoting that. As simple as that is, that's really everything I object to in this premise or this approach to veganism. And actually, I object to it equally whether we're talking about it within Buddhism or talking about it within Judaism. I think it's actually really important to recognize the extent to which veganism is a new idea, and veganism has very shaky roots, if any, in ancient religions. I mean, I've met people who've tried to argue that veganism is a natural extension of Islam, that veganism is a natural extension of Christianity, and again, with Buddhism and Taoism, even though the argument seems so much easier with Buddhism, or Taoism for that matter, I think it's really, really important to recognize the opposite of what this guy just claimed, that this is a modern idea that we are appending onto the ancient tradition or the traditional religion. This is not an ancient idea we're finding in or that was preached by the ancient religion. Now, in the case of Judaism, of course, it's a little bit extra absurd because anyone who has actually studied the Torah, anyone who's actually studied the Old Testament knows that that was a religion absolutely built on animal sacrifice. Ritual animal sacrifice and meat eating as part of the animal sacrifice. You don't just kill the animal, you kill the animal, cook the animal, share the meat. The ritual sharing of meat between the different classes or different castes, including and especially, the priestly caste, however you want to say it, the ritually special caste. This is the core of ancient Judaism. Ancient Judaism was built on ritualized meat eating, and the number of laws, the whole of the Old Testament is virtually obsessed with law, both law as a general concept and then details of particular laws. The extent to which the laws really concern raising animals for food and ritual slaughtering of animals and consuming it is ridiculous. So, honestly, what I think of when I hear this kind of, to me, totally fictional approach to history. To me, he is fictionalizing the history of the religion. It actually reminds me of a crossroads I feel that the Western world came to, that all of Western civilization came to back in the year 1992. 1992 was a long time ago, folks. In 1992, there were many, many celebrations of the life and career of Christopher Columbus, a.k.a. Juan de Colón. 1492, 1992, the years sort of rhyme. I think everyone stood at a crossroads in America, in England, in Spain, in Hispaniola, so I think everyone had to look in the mirror and ask themselves, are we going to fictionalize the history of how Europe colonized and conquered North America and South America? Or are we going to keep it real? Are we going to be honest? Are we really going to re-examine what happened? Are we going to look at slavery and genocide and conquest and the individual person of Christopher Columbus and his personal involvement with atrocities, the involvement of the Catholic Church in those atrocities, the very important role of Rome and of edicts, of legal decisions made in Rome in that history of colonization? Which way are we going to go? And from my memory, I was a kid, but in 1992, I can remember, I think, Western civilization, to generalize about it, Europe and all of Europe's former colonies. I think in 1992, people really sat on the fence. During that year, I think a lot of people were not decided. There were a lot of people who felt maybe it was harmless to tell a sort of comforting lie, a set of half-truths about to what extent Columbus was a good man or a great man, or the discovery and colonization of North America was a good thing or a great thing, and to present the enslavement and genocide and slaughter of native peoples in a flattering light. I think at that moment, there was a sort of indecision. But in the decades afterwards, I think there's been a great disambiguation. I think today, among educated people, it's almost universally accepted that we have to teach that Christopher Columbus was a terrible person, and that what he did, both in theory and practice, in conception and execution, that the basic idea of that colonization in terms of enslavement, genocide, etc., was wrong and evil from the start. That the actual acts carried out by Columbus and his direct employees are crimes against humanity that have to be remembered as terrible things. I honestly feel I've seen that emerge as a kind of consensus, as a kind of common shared value in the Western world since 1992. And partly because in 1992, people had to face up to the ugliness of propaganda that was just outright celebrating and glorifying Columbus. I think people had to look at that propaganda and think, is this the road we want to go down? Do we want to live a lie? And for how long? For another century? For eternity? Or do we want to deal with the truth? I think each of these religions basically has to ask themselves that question when it comes to veganism. And for me, you know which way I'd vote. I would much rather see people, whether they're involved in Judaism or Christianity or Islam or even Buddhism, take the honest, down-to-earth attitude that, this is something new. This is a new modern ideal being appended onto the religion. If you sincerely believe what this guy claims, I'll give you the link below this video to his to the YouTube page for this group. If you sincerely believe that this is not a new idea, but this is an ancient and consistent part of Christianity, Judaism, etc., why are so few pages devoted to it, right? The Bible, is many hundreds of pages long. I don't know what copy you have, but anyway, maybe it's over 1,000 pages. Many, many hundreds of pages long. How many pages are devoted to veganism? Now, in Buddhism, even though I do think it is easier to argue that Buddhism asks questions that veganism can answer. Like, I think there are fundamental challenges to our social values that can be answered by veganism that you can find in Buddhism. Still, Buddhism is not a vegan religion. It's not. I've studied ancient, authentic, canonical Buddhism, and people want to kid themselves about this. But I can basically put down the same challenge. I can say, look, the Buddhist canon is much, much longer than the Jewish Bible. We got thousands of pages. How many of those pages are devoted to veganism? All right. And the answer, my honest answer, I've written articles, I think the answer is 0. But even if, people manage to pick out a couple of sentences that they can kind of sort of interpret as supporting veganism, this is really a joke. This is a bad joke. This is well into the realm of, you're past the point of diminishing returns. Now, okay, this isn't my thing to talk about. Other people have talked about this. There was actually a Jewish vegan YouTuber, and she deleted her channel because of the hijinks of Vegan Cheetah, because Vegan Cheetah harassed her and claimed they had a sexual connection between them, and they didn't. So respectable people get chased out of YouTube all the time. But I remember she had a video where she talked about in a down-to-earth way. Look, the reality is the dietary rules for true believing Orthodox Jews are so complex. There are some religious Jews who become vegan just as a way to simplify their lives, where they look at these ridiculous dietary rules that you're supposed to follow as a religious Jew, and they decide, you know what, it's easier to just be vegan. Now, if that's the connection you're working with, I think in a sense, this only creates more problems. We're very accustomed to in veganism talking about the difference between ethical vegans and dietary vegans. Well, now you're talking about religious simplification vegans? How are you even going to describe that? So, in theory, you'd be talking about some people who are neither ethical vegans nor dietary vegans, but are becoming vegans so they can avoid dealing with the complexities of a ritual and magical diet. This is not a good foundation for veganism as a political movement, or even as a diet trend or anything else. But I think there is some truth to that. Anyway, I just say her channel is now deleted and gone. But she had some videos where she was really countering the idea that Gary Yourofsky had flown to Israel and given some lectures and thousands of people became vegan overnight. That this is a total myth. There is an interesting basis to examine for why veganism grew as rapidly as it did within Israel, and of course before that vegetarianism. Somebody's got to do the study on that. Somebody's got to do the research. But the answer is not Gary Yourofsky. The answer is not YouTube. And it is also not, in a simple sense, a connection to, the Torah or the Talmud or, true believing religious Judaism. I guess that's all I had to say in this video. For me, I think the most fundamental question here, whether you are an atheist or not, actually is the parable I posed in terms of Columbus. The question is, in the present tense, are we going to fictionalize history, or are we going to face up to the reality of history that is often ugly and often ideologically inconvenient? right? If the reality is, like, the vast majority of people who identify as Jewish are frankly atheist Jews now in 2016. Atheism and Judaism are de facto compatible. There are a lot of people who feel passionately about Jewish identity or Jewish nationalism or their Jewish ethnicity, but who do not really believe in a monotheistic God, who do not pray, who do not have that kind of personal religion anymore. I understand many of those people want to believe that they're part of a tradition that is moral and good, so they're looking around for bits and pieces of a vegan ethic or a vegan aesthetic in these copious religious texts. And is it that they're looking for the Jewish religion to justify veganism, or are they looking for veganism to justify the Jewish religion? I think it's the latter. I think in a lot of cases, people just want to believe that Judaism is morally good, so as soon as they're ethically committed to veganism, they then look for some roots of veganism in Judaism to justify it. And I got to tell you, the step forward for everyone, whether you're Jewish or Christian or Muslim or Buddhist or Japanese Shinto, the step forward for everyone is to instead come to the same realization we had to come to with Columbus, which is that we just have to draw a line in history, and we have to admit, frankly, this is a fundamental ethical problem that our ancestors did not want to face up to. For centuries and centuries, or in some cases for millennia, this is a question we're asking. This is a question we feel we have the answer to. But there is no point in pretending that our ancestors shared this concern, or that our ancestors asked the same questions that we're asking, nor that our ancestors ever came to the simple and ineluctably modern solution that is veganism. Hit me up.